This video is going to cover the topic of factoring and the distributive property. Please be sure to have your date and topic at the top of your page. The essential question is a little bit long. Make sure you write the whole thing. It says, what is the distributive property and what does it have to do with factors? The distributive property is a bit hard to define, but we're going to write down something here just to have as a reference. Basically, the distributive property tells us that in math, we can rewrite number sentences by factoring out or taking out a common factor from both numbers. Make sure you have that recorded in your journal, and know that this will be important as we and you move forward in math, particularly with algebra. But for now, we just kind of want to get the basics. So we're going to do a few basic examples. So with my example, I'm going to look at 55 plus 25. And I know, of course, that that equals 80, and I can solve that no problem. But I want to use this to demonstrate the distributive property. So the first thing we need to look for when we're talking about this process is the greatest common factor of the two numbers. And I'm sure looking at this, right, most of us know already that the greatest common factor here is 5. But if you come across a pair of numbers and you aren't sure of their greatest common factor, you can use any strategy that works for you, including the cake method, to find it. Now I'm going to use this knowledge of the number 5 here to help me factor out the 5. When I reference the term factor out, it means that I'm going to be dividing both numbers by the GCF. So this is an important thing to remember. This is what factor out tells us. And when we do that, we're going to also need to be able to use parentheses to rewrite it. So let's go ahead and divide 55 and 25 both by 5 to factor out the 5. So of course 55 divided by 5 is 11 and 25 divided by 5 is 5. Right? So this shows that I've divided both of these by 5. Since I divided them both by 5, when I rewrite this with the distributive property, I'm going to put that 5 down first. That is going to be followed by the opening of a parentheses. Then I'm going to write what was left when I divided both numbers by 5. In this case, it was 11 and 5. I'm connecting those with the addition symbol because there was an addition symbol originally in the problem. And then finally, I'm just going to close my parentheses. And now I have rewritten 55 plus 25 using my distributive knowledge as 5 parentheses 11 plus 5. And one thing to note is what parentheses mean in mathematics. So in math, the number outside of a parentheses is multiplied. It's a symbol of multiplication. And you multiply it by anything that's inside the parentheses, the total of whatever is inside. So that's just something to be aware of and make note of as we move forward. So if I think about it, right, if I look at this, I know 11 plus 5 right here is 16, and 16 times that 5 is 80. I get 80 just like I would have if I had just added it together. So both answers get me the same thing, right? They are equivalent. Let's try a few practice problems. We'll start with a really friendly pair of numbers, 8 and 12. And we want to rewrite these using what we know about factoring out common factors and using the parentheses to show the distributive properties relationship to 8 plus 12. So first, let's take a moment to decide what our GCF is, our greatest common factor. So go ahead and write that in for a moment. Hopefully we can agree that the greatest common factor here is 4. And then we're going to divide 8 by 4 and 12 by 4 to see what is remaining. So just as a quick note, right, 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So now let's see how we would rewrite our original numbers with our factored out 4. So 8 plus 12 in math is the same as 4 times, that's what the parentheses means, 2 plus 3. And I can of course prove it by actually solving it, right? So 8 plus 12 I know is 20. Meanwhile on the other side here, 2 plus 3 is 5, And if I multiply that by my 4, I also get 20. Sorry, my pen is a little hard to read there. But 4 times 5 is also 20. So these are equivalent. On the next page here, I'm going to put a couple more practice problems. I want you to try to factor out the greatest common factor and rewrite the number sentence. So go ahead and try to rewrite these using the factor on the outside of a pair of parentheses to show that you see the connection between the two representations. Pause the video, give it a try, and then unpause it and we'll see if we agree. How'd you do? That second one was a little bit tricky, right? The greatest common factor here of 54 and 81. I know a lot of people might have thought it was 9, but actually 27 was their greatest common factor, right? So kind of be mindful of that. That was a tricky one. But hopefully you were able to see how you are able to rewrite number sentences using factoring. And the video, remember, the essential question was, what is the distributive property and what does it have to do with factoring? Hopefully now you have a little bit of an idea for that. And we'll be practicing it more in class, and it's something that we want to understand about math, one of the properties that we know to be true in math, so we can use it going forward for lots of different types of reasons.